Reconnect and heal today. Welcome to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Love Never Dies Radio on the Dream Vision 7 radio network that goes out to 136 countries, and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Networks television. So I want to ask you a question. Are you awake? You want to wake up? Well, the art of awakening is a sophisticated science, philosophy, religion focused on expanding consciousness and heart. The world not only sees art primarily as a commodity, but also compartmentalizes the meaning of it as strictly entertainment. And this is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the beauty life has in store for us. However, the art of awakening also acknowledges that due to our collective capacity to hide from our fears, the process of awakening often happens through trauma recovery and delicate rehabilitation. And because of this, my guest today, Ben Joseph Stewart, has dedicated his life to distilling the core elements of awakening and balancing it with adaptiveness, balance, compassion, and self-expression through art. And this is how we hijack the timeline of history to build a more harmonious future. So I want to introduce you to filmmaker and musician Ben Joseph Stewart. He's the creator of The Art of Awakening, and he's an amazing guy. He before touring his rock group Hierosonic disbanded, he'd already launched his third full-length documentary with global viral attention. Most recently, he launched a 14-part series called Psychedelica, and soon after hosted the talk show Limitless on Gaia.com. And he's currently finishing a film on cannabis with Chef Pete Evans and launching the Waking Infinity podcast to embolden people to discover unlimited human potential. So Ben, welcome to the show. You can't hear me? Oh, Ben, you are muted. I've got to unmute you. Ben, you're muted. Unmute my man. Dude, I don't have controls. Now
you know what? I did that and I thought immediately, I was just like, I wonder if I didn't need to do that. And as soon as I tried to unmute myself, it said the host needs to do it. So
exactly. And you were doing a Marcel Marceau imitation. It was you're doing. And I thought, and then I looked and I said, he's muted.
Yeah, I figured I would start pantomiming and seeing if you guys would
I
figure
saw
it out.
There was a movie that I saw where they were talking, she was insulting a guy for when he had an orgasm. She said, Marcel Marceau makes more noise when he has an orgasm.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that intro. That was beautiful.
Oh, so happy to have you. So everyone wants to know more about this amazing work because your work is really art.
Thank you.
Art is life, your work is art. So can you talk about how you came to this new Art of Awakening method?
Well, I mean, life is really the broad answer of it. Everything in my life, I was really into sports when I was younger, and I always thought I would either grow up to be an athlete or a professional musician. And so it was always something like the active use of my body, and then also playing instruments, but mainly singing. And I found so much joy when it came to, the thing about sports was the togetherness and the camaraderie. And I also had that when I was in a band. I was a touring musician for about 12 years. But then I also noticed the thing I liked more about music was the active use of my voice, the whole band coming together in the same moment, and also the crowd enjoying it and dancing and really getting involved. There was this revival of the spirit, I felt. And I feel like there's something about art that we diminish when we call it things like a painting or a sculpture. These are aspects or snapshots of art. But I really find that everything we do in life is an art form. And if we're not seeing it that way, it's really by diminishing it and relinquishing our command and creativity over our expressiveness in life and falling into the formula that was pre-digested before we were born, right? So I think the art of awakening is awakening the art within us. And when we use art forms like singing, dance, music, it could all the way be even to conversation is an art form, really understanding the nuances of speaking and listening as well. These are art forms. And the more we do this, awakening just naturally happens. It's like plants grow, you put in the proper food, nutrients, water, and if it has the right environment, it'll just happen. And I kind of feel like that's the same thing with awakening. And for the most part, what most of us are doing with our lives, we have so much more potential. We were just never told this, and we haven't in a sense, awoken to the fact that we have everything we need within us. So that's why I focus on the art of awakening. I've gone through music, filmmaking, and what I realize is there's so much about when you express yourself authentically, especially with humility, people acknowledge that within themselves, and it can spread like wildfire. My first few films, they went viral, and this was before YouTube. It was actually Google videos. It was before I ever knew what a viral video even meant. I sent it to 15 people. I thought it would be 15 views. And roughly, like, I think it was about 400,000 or 500,000 views later, within a couple months, I started getting the concept of sharing it out. But they wouldn't have done that had I done it in a way that wasn't as authentic. I was speaking from the heart. I kind of made it anonymous. It was free. I tried to make it very well done with soundtrack. And that was what allowed people to say, like, oh, all my friends need to see this. So they shared it out, and then their friends did that, and it becomes viral. So I really feel like when we step into our art and our authenticity and truly express ourselves, the soul wants to be heard, and the soul within other people, they want to listen to people, bringing it, really bringing their art. So that's why I've dedicated my life, every art form, every interview I do, all the stuff I've done with Gaia, every documentary, it's all in service to that very same end, awakening all of us to realizing that we have so much more power, but we need to use our voice in ways that are not harming and damaging of other people, and understand the nuances of the aikido of communication. We're not trying to harm other people, even if we have an uncomfortable truth to speak. We're really trying to neutralize harm. I actually just posted something on Instagram today of an alligator trying to eat a turtle, like a big old turtle, and you could hear it chomping, and they have a massive bite. But obviously the turtle, it just walked away, and the alligator just sat there watching it kind of romp away, because it realized, I can't eat that thing. And the turtle got away without harming it, right? So there wasn't any of this. They just both went their separate ways. They both lived, and no harm, no foul. I feel like there's a truth inside that we could all learn, especially in 2020, because things seem so volatile and people are playing into that. I try and show people, no, there's a better way, and it's by transcending some of the lower vibes and the immediacy of sharing very dark drama, I would say.
Everything that you say very much resonates with my life's work, and I totally agree with you. And I was thinking as you were speaking that most everyone loses the freedom to be authentic during the deformative years. That's a joke, but it's not a joke, because we are raised by parents who sit on us and crush our voice. Don't you dare speak up to me. Don't you, you should be seen and not heard. And so you lose the pieces of your authenticity. It's, there's a trauma just in living in a family that is so oppressive or abusive. And so then you're not the artist in your own life. You're just walking around like the life becomes a series of landmine fields that you try to avoid blowing up on you.
It's very true. Do you have children?
No.
I do, and my daughter reminds me every day when I'm playing out a pattern from my parents or their parents. She's very feisty, and whenever I try and correct her, and she stands her ground, it's a very good reminder that we're equals. Like I'm not the dominator and she the one to listen. I I love that. She's really an equal, and she has that hard task of reminding me when I'm not standing in my honor as a parent, and when I'm not being creative too, because really when when I get super frustrated and I just kind of snap out of nowhere, that's not me being creative. That's me in fear mode and anxiety mode, and that squashes our creativity.
Absolutely.
And she is so in the moment. She just wants to have fun and play, and for sure she needs guidance and she needs to understand with the right times for certain things to happen, but none of that calls for me to be in that energy, and she reminds me of that. And so I've made it a practice that as long as I always come back to her and I get down at her eye level and I say, thank you so much for reminding me, I'm really sorry for what you saw, and thank you for showing me that there's a better way. And then usually that snaps both of us out of whatever we were in, and we go off and we play a bit, and we resume what it really should be. And I think there's this guy named Stephen Jepson. He has a website called neverleavetheplayground.com. I think this guy is 90 now. He's super agile, probably more agile than myself, and I dedicate my life to movement and play, but that's what he's done. And he really shows that, and you can see it in his face and the way he talks. He's like the trickster, the Native American trickster in their mythology. He realizes that when we take ourselves too seriously, we're playing into a rigid formula that we probably never wanted for ourselves, but we did it because we thought we had to. And then maybe we felt that people who didn't take themselves seriously enough, that we look down on them and are like, come on, look at these people. They're never going to achieve the success that I have, or, all these benchmarks for success that we place on ourselves, which is really one of the things that I believe allows for what we see happening to ecology all over the world, right? We put economy before ecology, and you look at the mannerisms and the demeanor of why we allow for this to happen on a mass scale, and for the most part it's because everything is so complex. When you look at the legal system and you look at government and you look at the way things are written, and then there's loopholes but only for these people because they can afford the lawyers, and right, it gets maddening. And then when people then try to express their distaste or their displeasure for the way things are, that's when we try and squash their creativity. So we try and get them to express themselves like, let's all be individual. But when they do it in a way that shows like, listen, this environment that we are all living in, 99% of us are quite disadvantaged. And that's when I'm not saying we, the higher echelons, the 1%, I'm saying we self-police each other and tell people like, stop with your demonstrations, stop with your voice. And these are the mixed messages that we don't realize that we're contradicting ourselves in those ways. We do it as parents, we do it as community leaders. And I think the biggest problem is that so many of the most beautifully, not even eloquent people, but very in touch with their heart types of people, they're not using their voices, and they're probably not savvy enough to understand keeping up with the technology these days, being an influencer and all those things. There's so many people that are now starting to get the use of their voice. So we look at social media and we're like, oh man, it's just drama, and it's clickbait, and it's drama and clickbait. And when I take a look at that, I say, you know what, give it a couple years. And yes, we got to work some of the kinks out, but imagine you stifle your child's voice for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden you give them their voice back. And within the first 2 months, they're just blurting all of this disgusting stuff. And you're like, wait, let's take your voice back away. No, they're probably expressing what was building up inside of them for so long. So this is where I come in with my work, and I really try and work with people to see that when we only see, like when the only options we see for us to communicate ourselves or how we act and behave has to do with harming or disadvantaging others, that's when we are not the artist. That's when we are the conformist. And we're already in a world full of conformists. And that's not a knock on anyone. That's really just an observation. I feel we all could be stepping deeper into our power, deeper into our art. And that's what I try and usher forth with all the art. And really, I try to do it as humbly as possible and show that I don't have all the answers, but we all have the heart to recognize when we're standing in our honor or when we're not.
And you know, I agree with what you're saying. And when Till Death Do Us Part Unless I Kill You First came out, where I was talking about how do you communicate in a way that's loving when you really feel like slamming your partner up against a wall. You know, in the intimate relationship, it's the most challenging because you get the most triggered, right? And so a lot of times people, under the guise of, oh, I'm just being honest, are just using that as an excuse to bash, to verbally eviscerate someone else. And it takes so much what I call impulse control to say, no, you're not allowed to say this. Just because you feel cranky or grumpy or hungry or low blood sugar, whatever it is, you have to have a certain rule in your brain that says it's not allowed. It makes me think of this flasher. I know you're going to say, where the heck does this come from? But it's connected. So about 37 years ago, a family reached out to me, very famous family, and they said, our son-in-law was just arrested for flashing. Could you help him? So he comes out of jail, and I say to him, dude, this is an impulse disorder. When you feel like whipping it out, it's the same as when you whip your tongue out. I just feel like it, so I'm going to whip it out. The only way you can heal is to make the decision to say, I'm going to keep it in my pants. I'm going to keep my tongue in my mouth. Right. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to gratify myself. It feels good. And only when you sit with the frustration and force yourself to have that impulse control, it's like a muscle. It gets stronger with use, right? Mm-hmm. And then you say, okay, how am I going to reconstruct what I want to say into a communication that's going to be helpful and constructive for not just me, but for the other and for our relationship, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm forgetting the guy's name now. I think it was Rosenberg, maybe, who wrote Nonviolent Communication. And very good. And it's not just about words. You know, I found, you know, I posted something recently that was about when you breathe and you smile and you say the words thank you, it really, those three things all at once, they really express outwardly, and it's contagious to other people. But what's strange is you can change the words from thank you to F you. And if you're still smiling and breathing expressively, you still get this uplift for some reason. It almost just becomes humorous. But if you were to keep saying thank you, but turn the face very serious and purse the lips and really give this angry face, you don't feel as good. So nonviolent communication is also about the way that you speak. And a lot of the times when you speak too quickly, especially if you're in a heated argument and somebody says something that they want you to hear, but then you immediately snap back, you didn't even take a breath before snapping back, that means you weren't listening to the end. You wanted to snap back as a retort, instead of what the Lakota always did when they would have a council. When the council would sit, if somebody would speak, nobody would speak for another at least 3 breaths, and they would sit there and they would breathe 3 times before somebody would come in and speak. And that's just showing the respect, for one, that I have listened to you, and I'm taking the time to process it 3 breaths before I come up with my response to it. And when you said about you know, I hear that all the time. I'm just speaking my truth, man. I got to express myself. And I was working at Gaia, Gaia.com for a while. And there's a really good friend of mine and a producer there named Sid Goldberg. And he used to travel India, and there was this guru that he would follow around. And one time he asked, because he was a very straightforward guy, and I love that about him. And he said to his guru the one time, well, is it the right thing to do to always speak the truth, no matter if it's hard for people to listen to or not? And the guru looked at him and he said, granted, you know what the truth is. And that's the key, because so many people think that the truth has to do with, well, I feel this way, that's the truth about it, and so I get to say it. Yeah, but that's not the truth of the situation. The truth is, yeah, you wanted the freedom to say exactly what you want to say, but you also want the paradoxical freedom of any repercussions from it. That's not reality. So you want the freedom to live outside the bounds of reality, but you're still allowed to hurt people with your words because that's your right. This is kind of where we've even come in politics. And I won't get into names, and I'm not even talking about now, I'm talking about years back. But I was watching one of the debates back in 2012, and I will just say that Ron Paul was speaking. And while he was speaking, he was kind of the outcast there. And other people were snickering and rolling their eyes and getting the audience to laugh at Ron Paul. And all I could think of was, I was like, this is not a man who's up there like being flashy. He's not trying for glam. You don't have to like him or not. But the thing is like, I thought these were like the representatives of the most powerful, the greatest nation on earth, right? Snickering and rolling their eyes. That's junior high. That's high school. That's something that we teach children. Like, that's not how we communicate. And we have these top level people where everything they say sounds super rehearsed and very perfect and pristine, but their body language shows immaturity. That's when I had to step back and say, this doesn't seem that we as a collective culture really know what that means. It's almost like we've afforded ourselves, we're so into freedom, we're so into having whatever we want and being able to do whatever we want, and we're protected by the law. This is mine, I can do it. That we forget that that affords us the loopholes to violate the unwritten rules, the things that, like between a person to a person, you don't speak to another person like that, even with your body language, if you really want to keep it nonviolent. And so that's kind of how I feel like, in the same way that you could say that the legal system is written with loopholes that only the wealthiest or only the ones with the high priced lawyers behind them know how to exploit the loopholes. It's kind of the same thing when it comes to our arguments against people. Like, I'm just saying it like it is.
You know what, then? This is the first part that I have to interrupt you when you're telling me something so important, and I can't wait for the breaths before we take the break. But hold the thought. We'll be back in a moment on Love Never Dies Radio. And Dr. Turndorf, turn on the love.
It's Dr. Jamie Turndorf here, and I have a question for you. Are you or someone you love a veteran suffering from undiagnosed PTSD? According to statistics, between 100 and 200,000 vets suffer PTSD. But did you know that there's an arbitrary diagnostic loophole that denies the PTSD diagnosis to vets who suffer a coexisting mental health disorder? Meanwhile, according to the British Psychiatric Journal, it is rare for vets to suffer PTSD without a coexisting mental health disorder. This means that millions of vets with PTSD don't even know they have it and aren't getting treatment for it. Read my new column, Winning the War on PTSD, in mastersofhealthmag.com and discover a cutting-edge, research-backed new solution to PTSD that you've never heard about. The exciting news is this solution is free for vets with PTSD. Go to mastersofhealthmag.com, take my free PTSD quiz right away, and start your healing journey today. Wishing you all the love in this world and beyond, I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, also known as Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in and find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. Visit AskDrLove.com to find out more.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you yearn to get along better with your life partner or spouse, friends, family members, and even coworkers, Dr. Turndorf's book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, Dr. Love's 10 Simple Steps to Cooling Conflict and Rekindling Your Relationship, shows you how to turn conflict into connection for a lifetime of lasting love. Find out more about Kiss Your Fights Goodbye at AskDrLove.com. This is Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. This show is for you, the listener. Once again, here's Dr. Turndorf.
Welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Networks Television. I'm talking with Ben J., my new buddy, Ben J. Stewart. Ben, I cut you off and I didn't even have 3 breaths before. You were in the middle of a point. Did you want to finish your point?
I got a little wordy. I think I said it a couple times. Basically, I think what it was is really we should be more careful. And careful may not even careful. Yes, full of care and compassion, as the bodhisattvas do. When we speak, when we act, when we do anything, because this is our art.
That's right. And I call it in shrink speak, partial identification. Put yourself partially in the other person's shoes and you think, how would I feel if somebody said or did that to me? And if I wouldn't like it, then I shouldn't say or do it. Right?
Very good point. Yeah.
And then also another thing people forget, it's not just, a lot of times we get into conflict because I'm saying what I want to say and I want you to hear me, but you have to present a message that's hearable. I can't expect you to hear me if it's not something I can swallow. Mm-hmm. And then, 99% of really good communication is conveying I heard you by repeating back what you said, not just having these dual monologues, but stopping and then saying, this is what I heard. Did I understand you? And most conflicts can be resolved just by understanding the other person. When you feel understood, you're like, oh yeah, I feel better now. You don't even often have to make a change.
Yeah, you're very right. There's, I think it's called mirroring, like just either repeating back the gist of, or even the last few lines when somebody makes a statement about how they're feeling.
And then there's after mirror, well, we restate, we mirror, and then the one that I like best that's in my book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, is the questioning to clarify. So I ask the question, is this what you meant? And then you can say, oh, well, no, it was this, but not that. And then you use 5 questions so that you can get a meeting of the minds.
Yeah. You're definitely right. There's something that happens when people feel listened to. So I'm the type, when it comes to my wife and I, she sometimes comes to me with things that wouldn't bother me, right? Or I feel like I always jump into action. I'm like, well, how do we solve it? Well, let's do this, let's do that. And it took several years of me realizing this isn't, it kind of works, and she's really sweet, so she listens and everything, but I realized, I was like, there's something underneath it where I'm not feeling like it's actually doing what I think it should. And then I started reading, there's this 5 love languages up here, this book, and then the nonviolent communication. And even in nonviolent communication, when somebody is speaking something that they're upset about, it very much so is saying, like, is this what I heard? Is this what you feel? Am I hearing you correctly? And just saying that most of the time allows for the other side, the other party, to realize that you're making the attempt. If nothing else, you're at least making the attempt. I'm not just trying to fire back with what you also did. I really want to know, like, what did I do? And I want to understand it so I can go back to the drawing board and understand this communication a little bit better. It's a form of presence we very
be present. And it's interesting also, one thing that's so difficult is to be on the same level as the person that's communicating, the same emotional level. And the male gender role is about action and problem solving, and so it's very common for guys to come in with ideas and solutions and forget that the woman could think of the solutions herself. She just wants you to listen and understand and be on the emotional level, right? And
Yeah.
so you kind of got that. So you didn't really communicate on the level I'm communicating. If I need a solution, I'll ask you, but I just want you to understand me. We all need to be understood.
Yeah, yeah, and I really do feel we could use more edutainment, some educating entertainment out there, that isn't so just self-gratifying or all about the drama. We could use so much more that could educate adults, because we have some educational kid stuff out there, but when it comes to like communicating for adults, adults aren't going to watch kids stuff because we think that we're beyond the basics. But in a way, like, you ask a martial artist, when are you done practicing the basics? Never. Never. They're fundamental to every practice. You practice them if you're an Aikido master, or an MMA, somebody who's been doing MMA for 20 years, and you have those hits and punches and stuff, they still go back to the basics every single time. And I think we as adults, we should be calling ourselves to this higher level, instead of policing each other and telling each other what we can't do or shouldn't do. We should find that way that does the same thing that Aikido does. Like, if something is coming into our space, you work around it, so we're not harming the other side. We're really just showing there's other ways of going about everything that we're doing on this planet right now. I mean, I don't know if you're probably aware of Greg Braden, and he has this book, The Science of Self-Empowerment. He's got solutions in there towards the end, and also a way of like re-understanding who we are and our place in this planet. He's got solutions there that really could revolutionize the world. And he's not the only one that knows this. Many people do. But I would say, and he says in the book, one of the biggest issues that we have is it's a fundamental way that we view reality. A lot of the times we just throw our hands up and we're like, well, that's just the way it is. And we don't realize that that's a cop-out from the real inner work. And a lot of the times when we point the finger outside of ourselves thinking, well, they're the ones that need to change, most of the time, if we were to call ourselves to that higher level, we wouldn't even be wrapped up in the drama. We would be doing nothing but being the example for our community and everyone who bears witness to us and how we act and behave.
Right. So would you like to talk about your 3 documentaries? And then I know you have a new one in the works. Would you like, because you've got Esoterica Agenda, Kymatica, and Ungrip. Would you like to speak about them?
Sure. So this was back in 2007. I was in a band and we were touring nonstop, and my lyrics were, let's just say a lot of people really like the lyrics, but they're poetic. So I don't get straight to the point. That's in writing, they call that on the nose. So I was really getting a lot of people that were asking, what is the general nature of your lyrics? Like, what do you feel is happening in the world right now? What would you like to see more of? And as an artist, instead of just replying in letters and words, I decided I was going to make a documentary. So my very first documentary, Esoteric Agenda, was supposed to be 15 minutes long, and it was supposed to be about my band, which was called Hyrosonic. And it turned out to be 2 hours and 6 minutes long, nothing to do with the band. And it really actually touched base on a lot of uncomfortable truths. And it's what you would call a conspiracy film in the first majority of the film. But then at the end, when I realized, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't the kind of film that I really just want to launch out there. It doesn't feel hopeful. I was like, I really have to give it a twist ending, something extremely hopeful. So in the last 15, 20 minutes of the film, I really turned the film on its head to show all these things that I've laid out for you. It's what we tend to panic over, but none of it is worth panicking over. Really, the best way is by understanding ourselves better. And when I put that film out, it went viral. I didn't expect it. And a lot of people were asking if I could make a whole film that was more about the last 15 minutes of Esoteric Agenda. And that became Kymatica. And that film, it still had a couple of uncomfortable truths, but it was mainly about mass psychology and the way we kind of fall in line with herd or group think, they call it, and how we project our own inner, whether it be self-hatred or fears, and we project that onto the outside world, because as Carl Jung says, when we don't know how to bring forth the shadow in a healthy way, it comes out in a violent way. And if we don't bring it out at all, it just destroys us from within. So I was really showing that, in the same way that for most people, if they have an awakening experience, some people say, oh, it was just glorious the whole time. I woke up and everything was great. A lot of people, their awakening experience is through a very difficult experience, whether that's through psychedelics, meditation, the passing of a loved one, whatever it might be. It's usually we have to come to a hard truth, a hard reality that wakes us up to the humility of, we already have everything that's beautiful. We already have access to everything that's amazing about life. The issue is that we're not seeing it because we want, most of the times we want the things that were promised to us when we were younger, the glamorous things, the type of lifestyle where we have all the money and very little responsibility, right? We can retire early or whatever it might be. We have everything at our disposal. And so life is this whole thing of acquiring and then eventually letting go and realizing that the releasing that back to the world is the beauty. So I tried showing that in those two films. So anyone who wants to look at them, Esoteric Agenda and Kymatica, they're not easy to watch. And I did that on purpose. However, the third film, on Grip, my very first talk, public talk, was up in Canada with this guy, Rob and the Paget family. And he quit his job. He sold his house. He moved onto a plot of land. He built an eco-friendly house called an Earthship. And he started living off the land with true respect to the land. And he gave up all of his documents, like his birth certificate, driver's license, because he went through law, what governs him. And he realized at the core of all law, it says, it basically gets back to the Bible, which is saying, we are sovereign beings and our only master is God, our Lord, and that which we call that force above us. So anything in between that we are serving means that we are serving two masters. And so I followed him around on his land and to a bunch of his talks where he was sharing his wisdom for free for people. And that was those three films. I would like to say they're all very uplifting if you understand that the way to get to the uplifting part is by realizing there are some massive changes internally, and then collectively we may have to go through as a species and as individuals if we wish to live in the type of harmony that we always believed we deserve on this planet.
Mm-hmm. And you make suggestions for what these upheavals entail?
Oh, let's see. The upheavals always have to start within. They always have to start within. And I try not to pretend like I know what it will look like once it gets to the outer world. I don't feel like it needs to come to war. We don't need World War III. I don't feel like obviously we grow plenty enough food for there not to be poverty. We have plenty enough solutions with energy to where we don't need to be burning fossil fuels anymore. We have plenty enough, let's say, weaponry to destroy ourselves more than 1,000 times over if we wish, but we haven't yet. So what I would say is that we're in this pickle, we're kind of in this dilemma, and yes, we're destroying our habitat at an amazing rate, we're squashing biodiversity at an amazing rate, but this is really getting us to a choice point. And that choice always has to start within, because if it doesn't start within, then it's false, because we are pointing the finger outside and demanding that authority outside of us make a rule that we can't do this anymore, because that always leads to people feeling like their rights and their freedoms are being taken away. So
I hate to take away your freedom of speech, but we have to take a break. We'll be back in one moment on Love Never Dies Radio and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Network.
it's Dr. Jamie Turndorf here, and I have a question for you. Are you or someone you love a veteran suffering from undiagnosed PTSD? According to statistics, between 100 and 200,000 vets suffer PTSD. But did you know that there's an arbitrary diagnostic loophole that denies the PTSD diagnosis to vets who suffer a coexisting mental health disorder? Meanwhile, according to the British Psychiatric Journal, it is rare for vets to suffer PTSD without a coexisting mental health disorder. This means that millions of vets with PTSD don't even know they have it and aren't getting treatment for it. Read my new column, Winning the War on PTSD, in mastersofhealthmag.com and discover a cutting-edge, research-backed new solution to PTSD that you've never heard about. The exciting news is this solution is free for vets with PTSD. Go to mastersofhealthmag.com, take my free PTSD quiz right away, and start your healing journey today. Wishing you all the love in this world and beyond, I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, also known as Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in and find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. Visit AskDrLove.com to find out more.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you can't stop crying over the bodily loss of a loved one, Dr. Turndorf's #1 international bestseller, Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased, will show you how to toss out the tissues and transform your grief into joy using her groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique that enables you to reconnect and even heal unfinished business with those in spirit without the assistance of a medium, channeler, or psychic. Sign up for Dr. Love's free newsletter at AskDrLove.com and receive an exciting gift, a free excerpt of Love Never Dies. And now, back to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio. I'm Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love. I'm talking with Ben J. Stewart. And Ben, we got through your wonderful synopsis of the 3 documentaries that you've done. And you said before we went on air that you are now in the process of beginning a new documentary. Would you like to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I began working at Gaia.com, the very first project they had me work on was one on psychedelic plants or plant medicines and shamanism. And that really thrust me into a world of a bunch of people coming to me to work on projects that have to do with psychedelics, shamanism, awakening in that respect. So I just concluded a film with, his name's Chef Pete Evans out of Australia, and that's called The Magic Plant. And that one is about cannabis and hemp, and really kind of showing both sides of how to use it respectfully and where it's headed commercially. So that one's a really good one, and that's on evolvenetwork.tv. But the one that I'm working on right now is really near and dear to my heart, because right after I did Psychedelica on Gaia, I did a series where it's just me direct to camera. And that one was all about human potential. It's called Limitless. And so I show very simple, practical ways to tap into our own human potential. In that show, I spoke about a book that I read called Questions for the Lion Tamer. And that was all about, it was by John A. Chavez, a really brilliant guy that now I'm working on this project with him. And the whole book was about understanding why we produce endogenous chemicals like dimethyltryptamine, DMT, in our brain. But he also showed in his second book that we actually produce the whole pharmacy of ayahuasca. So ayahuasca has DMT, and another plant that has the MAOIs, the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, that allow it to activate and pass through our gut to get into our brain. We produce all of that within our very own brain. And so he asked me, would you like to do a film called, it's a film series called DMT Quest. And it's basically understanding why. Why do we produce the most wildly psychedelic compound in our own brain? And this is mainly because the University of Michigan, Jimo Borjigan and John Dean, and now Nick Glynos, these are researchers that are the only ones in the world really looking at endogenous DMT. Endogenous means produced within. Exogenous is when you have to take something or eat something or drink something to get that chemical into your system. So we interviewed Wim Hof. He's the Iceman. He's a Dutch man that he has this breathing technique. It's an ancient Tibetan breathing technique that he repurposed to show you do this breathing technique, and just anyone off the street who does this breathing technique can withstand freezing temperatures, in ice baths for minutes. And it takes away the pain shock proteins, but it also, the breathing techniques bring on an altered state of consciousness. So we interviewed him, and we interviewed all the scientists to really to expand on why is it that we produce this within us. So that's what I'm working on right now. And the reason why I like that one is I don't mind talking about psychedelics, but usually the reason why I'm careful about talking about psychedelics is because I don't think that's where people should start if they're looking to go on a spiritual path. I think we should all be starting with meditation. You asked me before the break, what should the upheaval look like, that the whole planet, or what might it look like? I think the way we turn the current paradigm on its head and start being the masters of our way forward into the future, I'd very rarely say there's one size fits all or one practice that everyone should be doing. But there are two that I believe we should all be doing. One is meditation. And the reason is because meditation is simply the act of observing better. Now, yes, you sit. Yes, you focus on your breath, that single pointed focus. There's also expanded focus, but really meditation is just being more present and aware in the moment. And I've not seen any evidence that that's a bad thing. I've only seen that can bring us to the second thing that's the most important, and that is cultivating compassion. Beyond anything else, every wisdom teaching shows that from living from your heart, living with compassion, not only adds longevity to your life, but it makes the whole quality of your life and the people around you, plants, pets, people, whatever around you, it enhances the quality of life. And I really do believe that the reason why I focus on psychedelics, if you were to take a psychedelic, yes, you could have an ego death, and yes, it could turn you onto a spiritual path. However, in the same breath, I have to say that it also turns people into things that they didn't expect. It brings people into a messiah complex where they believe they're God, but they're mistaken because we're all God, but they mistake themselves as being the only one and everything else is not. And I think psychedelics, it rips open the veil a little too quickly. I believe meditation, you're in the driver's seat, you control it, and you've earned every step of the way that you get. And meditation, it affords you the ability to understand in the right way, in the humble way, in the most ancient and timeless way, why compassion is the one way forward that we really all need to be cultivating a bit more. And so this new project, DMT Quest, really, when DMT, it's pretty glamorous. We're talking about why do we make this psychedelic drug inside of our own brains, but really all of the stepping stones that lead us to understanding why and also how to use it. How do we gain access, the keys to that vehicle? It really has to do with our own inner work. And really, yes, you can breathe a lot and you'll probably bring on an altered state, and you may even process a lot of trauma, but it takes a lot of real hard looking at ourselves, looking at the way we speak to other people, and doing our own life reviews, like people who have near-death experience. 20% out of all cardiac arrests end in people, when they come back, 20% of them say, I had a near-death experience. And there's fundamental things across the board they all say. They don't all see a bright light, but almost all of them have an out-of-body experience. They have a life review. And that means within an instant, they see all of the things that they have done and said, but they also see it from the receiving end. So what we were talking about in the beginning, when they shared harsh words, they didn't just see themselves sharing it. They received those words as the other person. And I think that's very crucial to understanding compassion. So that's the latest project, DMT Quest, that I'm working on right now. Should be out in November.
It's a documentary.
It'll be a series. So this will be about 40 minutes, the first episode. And we have Dr. Rick Strassman, who wrote DMT, The Spirit Molecule, Dennis McKenna, who's a very famous psychedelic researcher. We have myself and John A. Chavez. He's the author of that Questions for the Lion Tamer. We have Wim Hof, some Wim Hof practitioners, various other people, Mauro Zapatera, who he's an MD who looks at the cerebrospinal fluid and what role that plays in DMT production, and also how breath can move that along in our body. And soon we'll actually have a UFC light heavyweight champion, Rashad Evans, speaking about how he was this rough and tough guy. Fighting was the name of the game for him. And then he actually had a few mystical experiences, some on psychedelics, some not. And you should hear him. He was just on the Joe Rogan podcast. He talks like a brand new man. And this is because of not the compound, not the psychedelic compound, but what that affords people. And that is taking a look at ourselves, taking a really hard look at ourselves, our actions, our behaviors, and even the little things we do, the products that we buy, even when we don't know that company we just bought from is destroying the ecosystem down in the Amazon so we can get our palm oil, whatever it might be. All these things have an impact. And if psychedelics and altered states and meditation shows us anything, we're all entangled. We feel the impact of all of our actions, whether in our conscious mind we shove it down into the subconscious or not. We know, we really do. And that's why we don't need authority telling us how to live a better life and how to bring joy, abundance, and real compassion back to the earth. The answer is really here in the heart.
Yeah. So you're going to be moving to do this series, right? You said, I think you're leaving tomorrow to go and work on it.
I've already been working on it. Actually, I have, everything right in front of me that I'm working on.
You have to
I'm moving to Tennessee here. So it's kind of a, involved story, but I'm driving to Colorado to film Psychedelica season 2 at Gaia headquarters. And then we come back, we pack up a trailer, we drive that down to Tennessee, and that's where we really start a new chapter of making film, making music. We have a bunch of really close friends down there, really connected. And I'm looking at really gathering community down there because, as an artist, I want to see more people down there doing things like breath work, but also let's bring the kids and the parents together and do choir, do stomping and clapping and bring music and some kind of celebratory process for the community so we can remember masks, no masks, like whatever it has to be as it happens. There's always a reason for us to be together so we can at least see one another and celebrate the fact that life isn't too terrible right now. Yes, it's a very topsy-turvy world in 2020, but a lot of the times we let what's going wrong shadow what's going very right. And we take a look at these very difficult things that are happening in the world as things that could only lead to more difficulties or more darkness. And I believe the exact opposite. I believe this is priming us to see what beauty must, not could, but must come out of this whole scenario, and how we not should, but must lift each other back up instead of policing each other and trying to silence each other's voice. So that's what that move is going to be. A lot of community, a lot of art, a lot more film.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So in the last 3 minutes of the show, would you just tell everybody who's new to your work how to find you? And I know you also do coaching, although you won't have as much time to do the coaching now that you're involved in the series and so on. But tell everybody how to find you, and then give us just a last parting thought.
Okay, beautiful. You can find me at benjosephstewart.com. That's Stewart. I always tell people to go to my Instagram, and that's at Ben Stewart Dali, Dahli, which is my artist name. And that's how people can contact me. I tell everybody, you can contact me through the website or Instagram. I really try to reach back out to everybody who contacts me. My coaching work is very individualized, and it's really bringing people into that mystery school of life. And that's really just understanding the mysteries of art that lie within us. We have all the solutions. So I won't get into all the tops and, all the ins and outs of what it is that my coaching does. If you're interested, go ahead and contact me. And I would say, let's see, my parting thought would be, it's funny because I pulled a tarot card right before this, and this was for you, and this is the Empress. And there was just something in this book that when I was reading it, Hermann Hesse wrote this, and he said, every manifestation on earth is a parable. Every parable is an open gate through which the soul, if it is willing, may enter into the innermost parts of the world where you and I, day and night, are one. So I think that's beautiful. If we don't know how to make sense of the world, 2020, it's crazy. Have faith that it is working out for the best, and open your heart and be compassionate. I guarantee you don't need to get your intellect wrapped around it all. Use your heart and come together as one. And that's probably the best thing I could leave you with.
That's lovely. And I was glad that you came together and were one with me for this hour. And I look forward to continuing and deepening our connection. And I'm just not going to say goodbye. I'm going to say so long.
So long. Yes.
We'll be in touch very soon. That's all I have for you now. See you next time on Love Never Dies Radio. And Dr. Turndorf, turn on the love.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Are we clear? I think we're clear, or maybe not, because it looks like the recording is still ongoing and that we're still live.